Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you've had the opportunity to enjoy some of that beautiful sunshine today and that you're looking forward to a beautiful weekend. We do have plenty to talk about, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our land acknowledgement. And should there be anything that really needs to be brought to my attention, you've all been in the Zoom room, you got 1,000 little clickers open. Feel free to, step up and say something if you need my immediate attention. So I'm going to begin with our land acknowledgement. We'd like to open this convening by recognizing that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional home of all tribes and all bands within the Duwamish, the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We cannot work to fulfill our mission and our vision of an anti-racist present if we don't first acknowledge and recognize the true history and cost of colonization. However, acknowledgement is only a first step. We urge you to engage in accountable relationships and informed actions. No real big updates today that are specific, but again, please do just send me updates and information to include in the BHI Network Policy Digest. That is kind of our communication pathway together. And I want to make sure that we're uplifting all those voices and activities that are furthering our shared priority to increase Black homeownership. So feel free to send anything that you think would be good for the whole into that, and I'll be sure to send it out. And then also just make sure you're signed up for that digest so that you're getting that weekly information. I'll be recording this meeting for those who, are out into the Friday sunshine, and you'll receive those links in the digest. So when you're connected to that, you're able to kind of understand the advocacy opportunities coming up and then where we are in the policy process for our homeownership policy framework. So please do make sure you're signed up and share that with others. We want as many voices in the room as we can get. So for today, we have a number of different updates that are happening. We are working through our homeownership policy framework for 2024. We went through the legislative session, and so anything we talk about on kind of the state level at this point will be with an eye towards the 2025 legislation. But there are other local, city, and county type of policy actions in our framework that we are continuing to monitor and keep you updated with and provide you with opportunities. In the digest this week, there was an opportunity for you to be able to send out an email to the mayor and to the Seattle City Council. We're asking you to send your message clear that you would like them to keep the Jumpstart funds for their original intention. They are supposed to be helping with affordable homeownership and affordable housing. They are one of the primary sources for the Equitable Development Initiative. And although there are budget constraints happening for the city, to be able to take those funds just isn't feeling like it's meeting our long-term goals or the commitments made. So if you haven't had the opportunity to take that 2 minutes and hit the button on that, please do, so that we can make sure their inboxes are full. People will make decisions based on what they hear. And what they hear is, we were able to use some of that funding last year. I don't know why we can't just keep using it again, but it was not intended to be that. It was intended to go to the sources that fought for it and the sources that need it. And there are many needs, but there needs to be other solutions. So I hope that you will advocate. That is the one advocacy thing we have today. Today, we're going to, again, get an update on the Seattle Equitable Development Initiative. You all showed up en masse to protect that program, to talk about the importance of that program. And we're going to hear from Jenna Franklin, who is the division director, to tell us, what has happened since those council meetings and where are they in the path for potentially, staff and RFP or anything else. After they speak, we're going to hear about the Covenant Homeownership Program launch. Pretty exciting, launched on July 1. What has happened in the last 10 days? We're going to get that update from the commission, as well as the CHA budget proviso that you all were a part of, advocating for in 2024. There are potential RFPs coming up for that funding, and so we'll hear a little bit about that. After that, we're going to hear from Habitat for Humanity about the construction sales tax exemption bill. So again, that was HB 2219, introduced last year. It will be coming forward again in 2025. So we want to understand the background of that, if there have been any changes and what the strategy might be. I know it can feel a little early to be thinking about 2025, but once the summer is over, and we start that holiday end at the end of the year, you really only have kind of September, October. And so we need to make sure that we're looking through the whole framework as we move along. You've probably noticed we're looking at different levels, city, county, and state, as we move through these summer meetings. After we hear about that, we're going to hear from Department of Commerce. So we have a new policy manager for home ownership there, Cliff Cawthon. You know Cliff in many other ways previously, but now he is with Department of Commerce, and he will be giving us an update on their budget suggestion to the governor for homeownership, and also, just elucidating what are those homeownership programs that exist that could be utilized to further our shared priority. If we have enough time and there isn't overlay, then we will definitely be getting an update from all of you. So there is going to be some open floor time. If you have something to share that is for the good of the whole, feel free to chime in when we get to that. And then at 2 o'clock, we will all be heading out into the sunshine. So I'm going to go ahead and end this little share so I can see you all and catch up here just to make sure there's nothing I've missed while I was out. And there's Jenna. So Jenna, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you are able to share your screen. And Jenna, will it be you and Julia or just you speaking?
It will be me, and I don't know that I need to share my screen. Most of the updates are things that I can give verbally, but I do have slides. If there are questions that come up, I can show slides to help clarify points.
Sounds great. Well, I will turn it over to you. So again, this is Jenna Franklin, Division Director for the Equitable Development Initiative. That is part of the Office of Planning and Community Development here at City of Seattle. And Jenna is the front line with what happens with Equitable Development Initiative. And so I'm sure that there are many who are eager to receive an update from you about how things are going. As we all know, there was a bit of a moment that happened earlier in the Seattle City Council. We had Council Member Rivera bring an unusual tactic into a budget process, creating a proviso. That proviso asked to stall the funding to hold it for the remain of this year. So the money that they had slated for 2024, which means no money had been released. And then also made a request about particular needs to be able to assume that they would allow the previous money that is being held to go forward and be used. Right. So I will leave it to Jenna to go ahead and give us an update. And should we have some time, Jenna's happy to answer some questions.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me back. And I have a few program updates. The first is relating to where things sort of left off with respect to the council action that put a reporting requirement on EDI to do a comprehensive sort of look back on projects that are already funded and sort of identify insights related to how that could be used to improve the program overall. And so we have started the process to identify a consultant team to help support that. It's a pretty significant lift. I don't know that the council actually recognized the level of lift they're putting on us. But broadly, the consultant community that we've engaged around this project has also shared that they are surprised how fast this report would need to be developed. And it needs to be a thoughtful report that can't, we don't want to create something that is used against the program or the communities, but more so that actually invites a good amount of reflection and allows us to really become a better partner to our grantee organizations. And so we're looking for a team that is able to support that interest. And we have an open solicitation. I'll go ahead and see if I can drop there we go. So we have an open solicitation. I'll share the link to that in the chat just for anyone who's curious what we're actually going out to procure support to do. And that will close on Monday, the 15th. And then we'll select that consultant the following week, open the contract, and start working on the schema for collecting information, the reporting structure, and really map out all the elements through September. But we've actually left the project open for a year because we want to make sure that this is a starting point. We don't want to say we have 60 days to do a report, that's it. This report, we want it to be at the beginning of work that we can do more in a longer term format with grantees to actually help EDI enter into a strategic planning effort where we're updating our framework and making sure the program is stable, secure, and functional today, and that we can incorporate any of the actions that council takes between now and the adoption of our next budget with respect to funding. So we just want to make sure that we're retaining this expertise to help us pivot around all of these sorts of unknown future potentialities. With respect to our RFP for our 2024 money, we have had internal briefings with our budget office and the mayor's office and provided an entire framework for how we might be able to do that. Also noting that that process is typically done by the end of September. So we've shown ways in which we could do it in that compressed time frame. And the conversations at the city executive level continue. We have not received any feedback yet about whether or not that is approved. So we continue to put forward proposals, be responsive, provide updates, adapt those based on the, the loss of time that happens as the decision is delayed. I heard something encouraging this week, and I'm hoping that that means within the next 2 weeks, I will have an actual more concrete point of feedback, at least a yes or a no. And then it would be, if yes, how do we actually now get it out the door? We know we need to accelerate projects to completion because this large carry forward on our budget, and just having so many projects with our current level of staffing isn't a sustainable or functional model. But also, as I look into the 2025 and 2026 budget environment with this deficit, I don't want folks who are really heavily invested and leveraged in these projects to look ahead and see any potential, constriction of resource and not have a way to close out their project. And so our main goal is always to say we do no harm to the organizations who, take a leap of faith to do business with us. And so we'd have to be judicious about how many new projects we could fund, given staffing, given the need to close out, of 77 projects. 68 of them are still open projects, not in service provision phase. And we've got about 5 staff members. So that's quite a lot that we need to manage. And some of them are really hitting like the complicated, sort of very intensive, heavy development construction project delivery aspect, which requires a lot more day in and day out project management. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions about the report or the status of the RFP before I go into lighter, easier updates.
Jenna, can you remind us, the legislation proviso that passed, when is it that you are to have the report to council?
No later than the 24th of September, which aligns with when the council takes its typical break from regular committee meetings and goes into heavy budget analysis, budget deliberation to prepare to adopt the budget by the first or second week of November.
And then you did say that did you recently add a staff member, or have you been at 5 the whole time?
EDI was originally conceived to function with 9 FTE, and we currently, including myself, and we currently have 4 FTE. And each EDI staff person does project development, but they also do other equitable development, planning and community development work. So equitable TOD, transit-oriented development, is a component of what we do. Indigenous planning, community planning in high equity, high risk of displacement areas like South Delridge. So it's not only the project management aspect that takes up the staff time. We will be adding another person on August the 7th, which is really exciting. She's incredible, Michelle. And then we have our EDI fund manager position that was open. The job posting just closed at the start of this week. And we anticipate trying to have that person, once identified and selected, we're in the review and interview process now, on board sometime in mid to late September at the latest. So that'll bring us back up. But in this budget process, there has been an ask for other unfilled or positions that were vacated during the hiring freeze to remain open and or become abrogated in the future budget. So we will not have an increase to our 9. We will fundamentally at best be at 8 or less for the foreseeable future.
So you're going to get up to 7 with your 2 new hires. And then do you have authority to continue forward and grab your other 2 individuals of the 9? Or are you being asked to not do so?
At this point, I think 7 is where we feel like is most likely that we'll end up. But the reason we're even below 7, even with the hiring coming in, is we have a couple of people out on family leave as well. And so that has had an impact on how fast we can move. Pretty incredible to watch, my staff serve so many organizations, but what we've had to do is let people know that we're operating at a lower level of staffing. Our lead times are greater. So as we work with our grantee organizations, we're asking them to build in longer timelines for closing on deals and things like that, and working with them a little more on an extended schedule, basically. Where we have things that are urgent and have to expedite, then we'll have to pull back from somewhere else and add labor and resource to make sure that we are not a problem point for our grantees. But thus far, we've found a way to hang on and make it work. But it's not sustainable this way. And even at 7, one of the things we'll need to do as we go into a strategic planning effort later this year and early next year is look at actually what is the span of control, or what is the actual reasonable portfolio that a project manager can balance to be a good PM and to be a good partner to the community organizations. What types of projects? Is it capacity building, site acquisition, capital project development, or having a portfolio of projects that are completed that they're doing annual monitoring on? So that we can make it clear when we issue notice of funding opportunities, how many projects on an annual and total basis we can manage at any given time. And or that if we were to take on more, we would need to grow. And I want to be able to create the foundation in the city's sort of landscape of what is a good business case for how do we grow.
Are there any other questions in the room? Or Jenna, is there more you'd like to share with us first?
Those are sort of the major updates that we have at the moment. I would say the other items are, we've been doing more around grantee storytelling. And so we, increasing the frequency of newsletters to promote the grantee projects, events that they have to really kind of help support them, but also to really show and share the story of their development journey. And I think that's been helpful. We presented last week on July 3rd at the Land Use Committee. We'll be at the King County Transportation Economy and Environment Committee on the 16th. We'll be back at the City Land Use Committee on the 17th with 2 more grantee spotlight stories. Will be this weekend. We have an event with the Museum of History and Industry at South Lake Union Park about equitable development and building thriving communities. It's sort of a family-friendly Lego challenge building event, um, which has been fun to plan. So those are the primary things we've been up to.
Sounds great. Any questions in the room for Jenna? Seattle EDI? Just making sure I'm not missing any hands up here. So I'm just going to recontextualize because, we're all tracking a lot of different items. The Seattle Equitable Development Initiative is based on the concept of community-led and community-owned development. The idea that communities understand what they need and that they are the best to figure out how to move forward. And what they need is that assistance. And we received a lot of national attention for Seattle when we moved forward with the Seattle Equitable Development Initiative. And it's something that we like to talk about a lot, and something that we're very proud of. And yet I think the recent council scenario, and also just kind of hearing about the constraints and pressures that are happening within implementing within the department itself, we want to make sure that as a policy advocacy group, that we're using our voice where we can to make sure that we are letting people know, what, this is the direction we think we should be going. We're seeing really amazing proven work, and we need to support this. So the idea that this is something that should be minimized, or that, we shouldn't be saying, wow, this is the thing that works. And in the other part of our speaking voice, we're also saying, and don't get to staff capacity, and get us a report in less than 60 days. And, maybe put the RFP out, but maybe not. And, it's just a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And I really appreciate you and your staff, Jenna, and everything that you're doing. I do think it's a beacon of light in terms of what we're doing as a city. And I hope that we will all use our collective voice and our individual network to be able to tell that story. I love the highlights you're doing on your recipients. They're really an exemplar of kind of what we're talking about, what I believe the mayor is talking about in One Seattle Plan. And we're hoping that the council will also understand that. The unfortunate scenario with that budget proviso didn't make it clear that that was true. And so hopefully there's been a little more education on their own personal part. But we saw the Connected Communities legislation shot down. That had been part and parcel of the EDI effort. It was going to say, what do these recipients need to be able to fast track their projects? How can we affect their zoning? What can we do to make the permitting process faster for them? And we heard the council say they wouldn't support that because they're going to roll it into the comp plan. Well, comp plan is happening, and I suggest that you all lean in and make sure that we hold them to that. It was an opportunity to get it done. It was an opportunity to see it already working and learn from it, but that was pushed down the road. So just want to get y'all fired up to understand that, the funding that is directly going to Equitable Development Initiative needs to be protected. And on top of that, given the success of the program, given the wonderful energy that we saw with 3,000 emails sent, 3 hours of testimony, people giving up their afternoon and their morning and what they needed to do in their life to show up for this program. I can't see anything else on our radar that is, super more imperative for us to put our voice behind. So I hope you will all, as we have opportunities for advocacy that are specific, take advantage of them, but always know an email to your mayor, an email to your council member. Those are effective. They are important. And if we do not, have their back, it's going to be very easy for this to kind of slide. It will become words. It'll be something we point to and say, look at us doing good things. And yet we're not fully supporting it or committing to it. When I mentioned earlier about the Jumpstart tax, revenue there is a large portion of that supports the EDI program. So these are connected things, and I hope that you will all lean in as you always do. Jenna, anything else you'd like to say? Any kind of last message to our group?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for all of that. And it's very true. EDI started because of community advocacy and community effort, and it has been sustained by that. And I think that will continue to be critical to to the continued sustainability of the program. In the chat, I also shared a link to our last year's funding criteria or funding guidelines for anyone who's less familiar with sort of how we function and operate. We update this every year, but because we haven't done an RFP in 2024, we don't have one for 2024 this time. That said, I think it's still very provides a lot of helpful context for what the grantee organizations are seeking to do, how they might do it through our program, who's most eligible. The other thing I think that's maybe a worthy update is that we're really going to work to create a technical assistance program throughout the next year, which will be both proactive and reactive support. In a proactive sense, how can we support people and organizations thinking about pursuing an equitable development project, develop their real estate readiness, kind of understand the scope and scale and element of these projects in different shapes and form. And then also on a reactive basis, if we have projects that are in motion that hit a wall, previously we did not have a residual of funds that we could apply. And the funds that grantees receive are never enough to do the whole project, really. And so they also wouldn't have accounted for an emerging issue like that, because city contracting also doesn't allow really money for contingency. So by achieving, a residual kind of a technical assistance program, we can help people get more ready on the front end, but we also have that money on the back end when something unforeseen occurs, that we can apply some resource to the project to help them navigate. And I think, complicated environmental remediation is one. If one of their funding something in their capital stack doesn't pan out and they have to go out and do an unforeseen capital campaign, you can really get stuck there. But also, like you noted, if money from the Office of Housing also shrinks, then our grantees, can't rely on that. So what do? How can we create a project of equal value and benefit if they could not find a way to include a housing element that might have been originally proposed, right? So what would that look like? And we can apply some assistance to help them re-envision and identify other ways to achieve the public benefits that they need.
That makes sense. And again, I think when we know that you have 77 projects, it speaks to people wanting to change their communities from within, and that we need to support it. So, if we can grow it, if we can support you, we will certainly, as the network here, BHI Network, do everything we can to do so, because we think you are embodying the work that is creating the change we want to see. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all of your staff for all of your service. We're going to go ahead and move forward now with our next guest. So this is Lisa Debrock, the Homeownership Director at the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Lisa has, the privilege here of kind of doing a birthday announcement. We are 10 days into the launch of the Covenant Homeownership Program. And so we're super excited to understand where we are in that process. So Lisa, I hope you're here to give us some great news.
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Oh, good. Well, hi, everyone, and happy Friday. And nice to see so many familiar faces this afternoon. And thank you, Bambi, for the kind introduction. And I am really happy to be here to tell you about the first full 9 days of the Covenant Homeownership Program, and a little bit about the the proviso. And I think all of you know, and Bambi mentioned too, our big launch date was July 1st. And hopefully I'm getting some silent cheers out there in the audience, because it was definitely a very exciting day for us at the commission. And I think there was a lot of true heavy lifting prior to that launch. Our staff has been extremely busy, basically setting up our systems, finalizing manuals, starting the implementation of a full communications plan, which includes a media kit, social media images, flyers, and much more. And of course, training, and more training. And actually, I'm a little surprised to see the wonderful Dietrich here online today, because Dietrich and Karina actually went on a whirlwind tour of Washington State. Thus far, they have trained over 132 loan officers, have attended their training so far. Trainings were held statewide in Vancouver, Tacoma, Seattle, Bellingham, Yakima, Richland, and Spokane. And we have had a lot of interest in the program, lots of really, really good detailed questions. And on top of that, Dietrich and Karina are going to be doing 4 more virtual trainings next week with over 200 lenders, real estate professionals, and nonprofits that are currently signed up. And further virtual trainings are also on our calendar following that. So we are in full training mode. Now, since our program launched July 1st, in the first week of the program, that was last week, we had 12 lenders who sent us the family history documentation to start reviewing. And this week, still counting, but on average, we've had 2 to 3 more new scenarios from loan officers. And I want to let you know they've done a really good job and have been very creative with the documentation and are just going to get better and better. But I know Dietrich and Karina both have encouraged the home buyers to go to a counseling agency, and when they get to their lender to be pre-approved, that these documents need to be reviewed by the commission first, because this is something different, something we haven't done in the past. But I can tell you they're doing a great job. So in the first 9 days, and day 10 is right now, I'm happy to report that we've had 4 reservations thus far. 2 of these reservations are actually set to close next week. Our first funding is scheduled to be on Monday, which is extremely exciting. On top of that, I know of 1 additional offer that was accepted, and the lender will be reserving that soon. One of our wonderful loan officers, a very active BHI loan officer, reported to me that she has over 20 pre-approved home buyers where she's gathered that family history already, and they are in the process of looking for properties. That's 1 loan officer. Amazing. Also, I've been talking to loan officers statewide. The feedback I've received so far is that this program is a game changer. All of our partners beyond excited. So in terms of calls to the hotline, they were definitely up, and I'm glad to see Evelyn here. Last week, the hotline reported to us an increase of calls from people asking about the program, and I believe they received 50 voicemails over the morning of the holiday weekend, and the folks have heard about the program through their pastors, their families, their friends, and the media. And the Washington Homeownership Resource Center is now caught up on all those calls. Evelyn, I can't even imagine the amount of work that took. And that volume has been steady since. And in my emails to Elizabeth yesterday, they will be giving us updated numbers in the near future. So on top of that, with the program, we have sent out a press release. It reached over 10,000 contacts in our system. And many of you probably saw that the Seattle Times ran a front page story on July 2nd. And we did receive some inquiries on the program from that call. And I know the hotline received inquiries as well. So we are off to a very strong start. And I'm very pleased with all of the results. I hope you can't hear that. My phone is ringing, and I'm hoping that it's muting that. But we are off to a strong start. So in terms of the budget proviso, as Bambi mentioned, hold on 1 second. Thank you. So as you know, thanks to all of your efforts, the legislature passed a $2 million budget proviso, which was really designed to help implement that Covenant Home Ownership Act. And these funds are not just to support eligible home buyers, but really to try to do something about the lack of affordable homes for them to buy. And I think we all know there's quite the lack statewide. So this is coming to the commission, and we are moving ahead. And to deploy the funds as quickly as possible, we are in the process of releasing 3 RFPs. Now, the first one is on the street right now, and it is posted to our website. I hope that many of you have already looked at this RFP. It's in the amount of $500,000, and it really embodies 3 different main activities. So the first is to provide those much needed housing counseling services, supporting our wonderful counseling network, which we all know is a very critical part for our first-time home buyers. And the second part of this RFP is regarding the documents, so that to help for home buyers to help with the documents and their eligibility for the program. And we know many people have had difficulty in documenting their family history as required, and we want to provide as much additional support as possible. And then thirdly, we are seeking additional outreach to reach potential eligible home buyers for the program. And this would supplement a lot of the work we're doing at the commission. And actually, we are also looking at hiring an additional person for this, and in the process of working through that now. So that is RFP number 1. Proposals are due August 16th. Again, please visit our website. All of the information and RFP is there. Please pass it on to anyone who you know who might be interested in applying. And we look forward to discussing some of the results from that with you as well. So RFPs number 2 and 3 are focused on the housing supply problem and how we can increase the supply for more affordable homes. And RFP 2 really centers around BIPOC developers, and the RFP is for $1 million. And it seeks a fund for an administrator that would deploy grants for pre-development support and capacity building within the community. And the grant would be used for things like purchasing land for building homes, site preparation, feasibility studies, and such. And RFP number 2 is expected to come out in the next couple of weeks, so I'm pleased to report that. And finally, RFP 3 is about finding those scalable solutions for producing more starter homes. So the proviso requires the commission to submit a plan to the legislature by January 2025 that has specific strategies really to reduce the cost of starter homes and buying land. So this RFP is seeking professional help to write this plan based on all of the ideas and all of the research that we've been working on, and especially through this wonderful network here at BHI. How we can scale up all that, how we can thread everything together in a framework with a long-term vision and create really an actionable plan going forward. So that's really the highlights of RFP 3, which we are anticipating to go out within the next 30 days or so. And just so you know, we're tapping the commission's expertise across the agency beyond the homeownership division. And we've also been in numerous conversations with legislatures, manufacturers, community leaders, and BHI and elsewhere to develop these different scopes of work. But please know when I say the word we, I mean for RFP 2 and 3 that I'm not the expert. Our executive, Steve Walker, has been working very closely on this and is much more involved in RFPs 2 and 3. But I'm definitely happy to take back any questions you may have on these RFPs and answer what I can. As you can imagine, in homeownership division, it's been a very, very heavy lift. We've been very, very busy launching the Covenant program, doing the training, as you heard. And so that has been our division's focus. And we're really looking forward to getting the counseling, the documentation, and outreach help through RFP number 1, which is what my group is in charge of. And that is pretty much everything I can think of. And I'm glad that Dietrich and Emily and Kat are also here on the call. So if you have questions, I would love to hear them, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Thank you so much for that update, Lisa. Are there any questions in the room for Lisa? So we're talking about the Covenant Homeownership Program launch, which is providing the down payment assistance and the closing cost assistance. And then we're also talking about the CHA budget proviso and talking about those opportunities for funding. Ms. Ruby, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
I appreciate this program, but you know, I did wonder one thing you talked about was available land, and I know that's a problem. And I wouldn't have any solutions, but I, did wonder about that. But another thing I was wondering about was the $100 that everybody that purchased a home would pay into the budget to help with this. Is that gonna be enough? I mean, are there that many people buying homes to actually?
Yeah, no, Ruby, I appreciate the question. It's a really good question, one that we put a lot of thought into beforehand. And when the study also helped us flesh that out, because it is a narrowly tailored down payment assistance program. And because of the family history ties to Washington and because of the income levels we're serving, it's a very narrow scope of families. So when the study analyzed it, they did not feel we would be anywhere close to running out of funds. I can tell you thus far, we're not anticipating that at all. We have received our first allocation from the wonderful Anne of $18.5 million, and I know there's more money to come. If we do get to that point, we will need to implement a system if we think funds are oversubscribed. But at this point, even with the volume we're seeing and that we anticipate, I would be shocked if we were having any of those issues. And I would think that would be a very positive and exciting challenge if we did. It would say a lot to all the work you did. So let's hope for that, Ruby. Let's hope for that. I don't think we're going to be close for a while. And Anne's going to make sure I have lots of cash coming my way, right, Anne? She's giving me the thumbs up, so.
And then I'll just remind us all. Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I was going to say, I just put in the chat that I have just poked our accounting office for an updated account balance to see if we can, how much we have in there at the moment. And it is a document recording fee. And so that is not only on people who are buying homes, but that's on any real estate transaction that results in documents that need to be recorded. So while there is a downturn in the number of homes that are being purchased for a variety of reasons, it is not limited to just homes being purchased. It's also on commercial properties, basically any document recording fee. It is not attached to like marriage licenses and those sorts of things, but it is real estate related.
Yeah, and I'll just add as well that, it's one source of assistance and that Wishwick offers a number of other resources that can be used as well. So you can layer. And also there is nothing within the bill that says it has a terminus. So it's not ending by January, get in, it's nothing like that. And so we can think about that short-term scenario in the market, but we also need to remember that this is a long-term scenario. And so although the amounts we had anticipated conservatively are lower than our conservative estimate, they are still significant. And we will continue to have the possibility of the program as we move forward. Thank you for the question. And I agree. I hope we run into that program problem. Yeah, because we'll be ready. We'll be ready to ask for more if we need it. Anyone else in the room with a quick question for Lisa? I know that Lisa does need to head to another meeting. We're all good. Thank you for the exciting news, Lisa.
Yeah, no, very excited, and I'm happy to come back anytime and chat with the group. So again, thanks for having me, y'all. Happy Friday. Enjoy the sunny weekend.
Yep, and then we'll keep connected with the commission. If they're, the announcements for RFPs and things like that, I will make sure to go into the digest every week. So you heard that there are a few more down the road here. And when we see those advertised, we'll make sure that we're communicating that out to everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. So next on our agenda, we're here to hear from Habitat for Humanity, both more a little bit on the national scale through Adan, who is someone who lobbies for them in a bigger kind of context, but then also Ryan Donohue, who is the policy person here for the Seattle King County Kittitas. It's so many T's, so many I's in that word. So Adam and Ryan, welcome. And they're here to speak to us today about a bill that we supported in 2024. So that would be the HB 2119. I think I'm right off the top of my head, maybe. And they're going to tell us a little bit more about that. So that we can remember what that is in our context. We had a lot of bills for our state bucket, and then let us know what plans might be happening for 2025.
Awesome. So first off, I want to thank you all for being here and participating today. I am hopeful you all can see my screen. I'm assuming I didn't screw that up in some way, shape, or form.
You're all good, Ryan. We can see you and see you.
Awesome. So thank you, Bambi, for the introduction. As she said, my name is Ryan Donohue. I am the Chief Advocacy Officer over here at the Seattle King and Kittitas County affiliate. With us also is Aiden, who is the contract lobbyist for Habitat Washington, among others. And we're here to talk a little bit about the sales and use tax exemption proposal that had been kind of started through the process last year, and we're hopeful and anticipating bringing it back again next year. So very briefly, to provide a little bit of context, wanted to start off with why is obviously this important? The short answer is, as everybody in this room knows, it's expensive to build, very expensive to build. And charging sales tax on projects that oftentimes are already using public dollars end up just creating a revolving loan of putting more money back into the general fund that was already allocated to be able to build more affordable housing. I have two examples of what we've done in Seattle of two different projects where you could see right there, basically one project of 13 units that had essentially was $19,000 in sales tax per unit, but overall was $254. That's almost an entire full unit that we could have built that ended up getting spent on sales tax. You'll notice as well on another project that was more recently that we're doing our final home dedication on sometime in the next, I don't know, month or two. I could be mistaken. That one was $342,000, right? Almost $343,000. So again, almost an entire full unit's worth of cost on sales tax alone. So being able to create this opportunity to be able to make it so, like you see in most other places, nonprofits not actually having to pay sales tax on the materials that they are using to be able to do the projects that they are doing, whether it is, in our case, construction, and many of your cases, construction, or other materials. This could make a big difference for every single one of our organizations, and really be able to help increase the overall amount of projects here. There's been a lot of, there's also a long history of creating tools and toolkits to be able to help more affordable housing. You could see a bunch of things that have already been passed over the last few years, and many of them have actually been used successfully. Things like the REIT exemptions that have been passed. I mean, we at Habitat have been able to use the sales for affordable housing one just recently. We all use the affordable homeownership sales or REIT exemption as well. Property being able to be exempt from property tax and land banking, tools like MFTE, surplus land, religious density, middle housing bonus, which just passed. And of course, the Housing Trust Fund, which is so critically important and has been around for quite a while. And now, especially important to everyone here, they even have the homeownership component of that, with a very deliberate and intentional focus on homeownership, which, thank you, Anne. All of which are really, really great and really, really helpful. And they work to help us move towards some of the challenges that we're seeing. This sales tax exemption that we're talking about is one of the things of the four kind of challenges and opportunities we see. The sales and use tax exemption will significantly help us on the inflation, particularly on the inflation side of these four challenges that we really see here, right? Being able to bring down the cost of materials simply makes it easier for all of us to be able to build more. I wanted to also briefly kind of go into what happened last year as well. And just to kind of provide a little bit of context of what happened last year, the bill was introduced by Representative Hackney. There had been a Senate sponsor, and then there got a little bit of confusion around all of that, and it ended up not getting introduced in the Senate, unfortunately. So we kind of only had the one vehicle. And as many of you know, in a short session, relying solely on one vehicle is always somewhat of a risky endeavor. We were able to get a hearing for it, and it was a really pretty good and productive hearing. And it, had a lot of positive feedback in the committee hearing, but unfortunately, it just never ended up getting prioritized enough within the committee to be able to move forward. So that, however, does not make us feel like we didn't get the job done. That definitely makes us feel like we have more to do. And it gives us hope that we'll be able to push this through next year, which is why I'm going to go ahead and turn it off to Aiden now to talk a little bit about what our kind of strategy is moving forward, and hopefully to rally all of your continued support for this effort, which was already, very important in the previous session, as well as in this session coming up.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think just to be pretty straightforward, one of the major feedbacks we received last session was that, is this more a habitat thing? Is it just for home ownership? Is it how is this? No one is really coming out and really talking about this too much. So having everybody's here support in the session, and Ryan and I are getting support elsewhere as well, I think is going to be critical. Ryan, do you remember if there was an exact fiscal note? I remember it was high enough that Chair it wasn't into the hundreds of millions even. It was maybe
It wasn't even close. It was less than $5 million total.
Yeah.
It was really, really small.
With the way which is pretty telling of how much nonprofit development is happening statewide. And that's something the state should look into. One might argue that a higher fiscal note is a better thing in this sort of the philosophical sense, but I digress. So my point is it's not super high, but it's high enough for folk to say, well, what can we have done with that $5 million instead? This is where all of you and other partners are really going to be critical to say, this, like we showed our numbers, showing your numbers, and having that heard to say, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars that collectively can build X amount of units. And more in particular, will help projects get started to begin with, when you're building your financing. So we have, I think, interested legislators whom we worked with last year. Representative Donohue, I think she wasn't necessarily, she didn't end up sponsoring or anything along those lines, but we had a lot of good conversation in the interim, and I'm going to talk with her again because she was going to bring a similar version of this bill before she let Hackney take it. I think Senator Trudeau in Tacoma is who we would like to talk to as well. We talked to her last year. She was very interested. It was one of those things, though, that, when you're running rent stabilization, things really start coming up on you pretty quickly in terms of workload. So I guess my ask is, anybody just to mention it to legislators, gauge their interest. This should really be bipartisan. I know some of our Eastern affiliates have been talking to the Republican legislators, and there's definitely interest there. I think the sponsors will probably be relatively similar. Having a long list of co-hosts would be helpful. And then just getting through those fiscal committees. I think the House should be a little easier since it's been introduced versus the Senate. We don't know how the Senate makeup's going to be. There's going to be a lot of change between now and then. I'm not particularly worried on the Senate. It's just, it wasn't introduced last year. I think with that too, it should be mentioned, the way those initiatives play out is also going to be a pretty big determinant on how legislators are feeling about revenue. And even if it's only $5 million, if they somehow take a hit of $6 billion in their budget from all the initiatives being passed, that's going to make this a lot harder. So that's sort of the lay of the land. I think even if even one of them or all three of them are passed, it's still, I think, important to advocate, and it's in the relative scheme of things, in a $70 billion budget, 5 million, I think, goes a long way for an industry that is really scaling up.
So I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or, is curious whether, it's about what happened this year, some of what we're talking about next year, why. We're certainly open for questions for a minute or two, I think, before we move on to the next topic area. So I guess the one thing I'll add is, and kind of, it's not so much an adding as much as a reinforcing the importance of all of you when you're talking with your lawmakers. Mention that this is something that would be helpful for you. And make sure that they know that. And not only mention it to your lawmakers, but for those of you that are putting together policy agendas or legislative asks or things like that, include this as a policy objective in your agendas, right? Make sure you're talking about this and keeping the conversation going. I think part of the reason why this didn't end up making it through last year was no one really objected to it, but it wasn't anyone's really big passion project, right? And if we can get more and more people interested and engaged and excited about it, it makes it more likely that we'll be able to get it through at the end of the day.
Yeah, I appreciate that reiteration. On the state affiliate for Habitat, this is going to be one of our #1 priorities. We're going to be aggressively coming at this year. So yeah, just showing up to testify once does a lot for us. That's all I'll say.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan and Ethan, for letting us know that you are coming back in 2025, and we will certainly be there to see how we can assist and provide us with opportunities when they come our way. But it is an open call that, if you're feeling fired up about the ability to, create a new unit inside because you have the exact amount of cost that you're putting in taxes, then step in here. So think about it in your network, think about it to your legislators. We do know that we are moving into a lot of unknowns with the elections coming up. There's going to be a lot of change and movement in the Senate and in the House. But, that will have a terminus. There will be, elections, they will finish up, and we will be in that position of coming into the new year with a new legislature and wanting to make sure that our priorities to increase Black homeownership continue. We know that Habitat has been an excellent BHI partner, and we look forward to supporting the bill in 2025. All right. Next on our agenda, and I have to say, like gold stars, I am almost to the minute on the agenda. We are going to hear from Cliff Cawthon, Homeownership Policy Manager at Department of Commerce. We've talked to the commission here today, and we're now talking to Commerce. These are, Commerce is basically the holder of the Housing Trust Fund. And so this is important information for us and our efforts in homeownership, and we're looking forward to hearing from Cliff about how Commerce is thinking about it, what recommendations they're planning to put to the governor as they think about 2025.
Thank you, Bambi, for inviting me to speak. And hello, everyone. It's great to see all of you on this very sunny Friday. I really hope that all of you are taking time to stay hydrated, as well as to just, I don't know, have a fan on. If you were lucky enough to knock someone over and snag an AC unit, good for you. Or if you're like me and you do all the above and you just shut all your blinds, so it may seem as dark as a bat cave, but alas, it cools down the house. So cheers. That being said, I also just want to just first of all say a hearty congratulations to our siblings at the Washington Housing Finance Commission. As many of you know, for myself, when I was at Habitat with my friend Ryan, we weighed in a lot with the Covenant Homeownership account bill, and alongside all of you, and I am just so happy and elated to see it rising like a phoenix from the ashes of injustice and beginning to really take hold. I mean, 50 calls, 20 people lined up, or 20 households lined up. Mwah, c'est belle. That being said, as they say, en avant. And let's talk a little bit about the capital budget requests, or rather, the planned requests that we have for well, first, actually, let's talk a little bit about 2024, and just bear with me for a second. Here we go. So, can all of you see this all right? Or are you guys seeing the notes side of it?
You're all good. We can see and hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so first things first. Before we get into our planned budget request for this upcoming biennium, I want to talk a little bit about a NOFA that will be dropping Notice of Funding Availability on the 19th. That is going to focus specifically on promoting new construction, as well as this is a significant amount of money. It's 17.5 million. So this is going to be something that it's going to open on the 19th and will be available for consultation and discussion and technical assistance. If you are part of a community organization or an organization that wants to develop affordable housing and you think you will qualify for this funding to help with that process, I'm going to put my info in the chat. Please feel free to contact me or my colleague Anne. And actually, here, I will also put her info in the chat as well. Commerce.wall.gov. And please feel free to just reach out to us. But yeah, so this is going to open on the 19th. We're going to interview in October, and we're looking to award funds by the end of December. So please reach out to us. And when we're looking at these proposals, we're thinking about, well, if you applied before and you were rejected or turned down for some reason, maybe you didn't have the capacity yet, maybe you didn't have site control yet, but you've made progress and you're ready to reapply again, I really suggest that you apply for this money. And this is going, like I said before, prioritizing new homes, because as we know that a big part of this housing crisis is there are too few homes to go around, and particularly for home ownership. And also, I should add that this also can be used for down payment assistance, for ensuring the continuing affordability of units, as well as some repairs. So definitely, please, please, please let us know. And yep, thank you, Bambi, for addressing that. We'll make sure you have the link so you can send it out to folks. So with that, by the way, before I go forward, any questions? And by the way, just fair warning, for the next 3 months, I will use the excuse I'm new. So if I do not have the answer for you now, we will get back to you. So please don't get frustrated just yet. Okay, hearing none, some of the programs that this can be used for to just flesh this out. So when I talk about affordability or keeping units affordable, that's the affordability subsidy aspect of it. So when it comes to making sure that the units being sold is affordable to those who are not able to buy in the open market. This is an example of just some math down here that can be used to lower the cost of that home to the home buyer, or down payment assistance. So for example, this is something that hits home for me personally. I was someone that benefited from down payment assistance to buy my home, and these funds can go towards making sure that those costs for either down payment or for closing costs, things like that, are either decreased significantly or covered, and these are recoverable funds as well. And then new construction, I've said it once, I've said it twice, so this will be the third time. Of course, we have these funds that can be used for new construction, and this is something that we're going to be prioritizing, and I'll talk more about that actually when it comes to our proposal, because this comes up again. And then, last but not least, rehabilitation. And I just want to kind of spotlight this for a second, because at least for me, when I talk about affordable home ownership, one of the things that I think does not really is not really stated enough is how keeping homes affordable means addressing the minor repairs or deferred repairs for a lot of legacy homeowners, for a lot of older homes that are owned or that are sold by nonprofits, community land trusts, many of the organizations that we have in this room. So making sure that those homes are kept up, those homes are fit for human habitation, and more importantly, we can keep those homes affordable and in this pipeline of affordable homes for affordable home ownership is super important. So these are funds meant to do just that. And also, yeah, and of course, keep those affordability covenants on there. So yeah, let's go to our plans, or our proposals, I should add, for the next legislative session. And I want to be very clear, very disclaimer here, that these are things that are proposed. They've not been approved by the governor's office yet. These are the proposals we are making to the governor's office for the his or their capital budget come the next biennium session. And we have an election this year, so we might have to pivot, do various things, but again, we always are looking for feedback from our partners, particularly from this amazing network. So please reach out to us if there's anything that I address that kind of piques your interest, or if you have any ideas. So we want to go big. We've been asked by the director to put together a proposal between homeownership, multifamily unit, Apple Health and Home, as well as taking in consideration our tribal communities. How much would it cost to really move the needle in terms of housing? So we are putting in a budget request for about 1.2 billion total across these different units. Now, for the homeowner side of that, 20% of this capital budget request is going to go towards homeownership. And while that is not the grand slam KO amount that many of folks I know have been dreaming about, this is a huge increase in comparison to where it usually is. So where it usually is, it's in the single digits. So this capital budget request, this is really swinging for the fences. And this is going to be doled up in terms of competitive funding for new construction, all of the different types of funding funding programs that we do here at Commerce. So those are going to be some competitive monies and loans and different packages that I'm actually going to be charged with working with many of you as stakeholders to figure out, if, knock on wood, this proposal goes through, we celebrate, yay, pass around the bubbly, we are able to get this money, then I'm going to be reaching out to many of you to figure out how we're going to allocate these competitive funds. So TBD. And then with home ownership preservation, a secondary portion of these funds is going to be used for preservation. And when I say secondary, I do not mean minimal. We want to tackle not just older homes, homes that are older than 15 years old, but also homes that are in our affordable home ownership pipelines that are less than 15 years or less, right? So don't let that plus fool you. We're also looking at homes that could potentially fall out of affordability that we can hopefully address. And then permanent affordability and seed funding. So just show of hands, how many of you have heard of the Home Futures Institute? For those that don't know, Home Futures Institute is a great program that we have done in partnership with the Northwest Community Land Trust Coalition. But it's not just for community land trusts, really for any community-based organization or even private developers or nonprofit developers that are interested in building affordable housing. A program in which you can learn about how to do that, all of the ins and outs, all of the daft bits that folks don't really know when it comes to financing the construction of affordable housing. And really the purpose of that is to build up the capacity of these organizations to build the kind of affordable housing that our communities desperately need. So we have placed a minimum number to this, and this number might move, but we want to see a minimum of $10 million go towards those graduates for capital and operating resources so they can go back to community and build affordable housing, or at least build themselves up so they can make a meaningful plan to partner with a developer, just to take action to start to move the ball down the road so we can see these units built. And then last but not least, we want to allocate $2 million over one or two 1-year cycles. So over 2 years, secure $2 million for the Home Futures Institute to support it. Because we realize that when it comes to technical assistance, pre-development, so on and so forth, all of these different aspects of the development process, that supporting organizations is not just going to be a one-off thing, that we want to build a continuum of support. And I know that I'm quickly running out of time, so I will try to speed run through this. So, and I also want to shout out my colleague Anne, who has been helping me through crafting the DP narratives on this, and just being a good all-around colleague. So I'm going to be passing it to her in a second, because we do have a bit of a surprise in terms of addressing, or something that could potentially move the needle in terms of addressing appraisals. But more about that in a second. So with our operating budget request, we're going for 15.7 million. So our foreclosure fairness program has been very successful. I am stoked to see, yes, and I am glad that you put that in the chat, Bambi, because from your keyboard to God's ears, hopefully. But anyway, I digress. So this operating budget request, this has been a fantastic program that has saved numerous households from foreclosure by giving them the tools that they need to not just navigate process, but hopefully to be able to get out of the process and to prevent them from losing their homes. So even though originally it goes back to 2011, right now is out of funds. So we want to make sure that, this program continues to be funded. So 15.7 million, and that includes supporting the Housing Counselor Hotline, counseling activities, working with the Attorney General's office to clamp down on the kind of weird and devious tricks that we're seeing in the market that are leading folks towards foreclosure, as well as representing homeowners who are going through the process, right? And we at Commerce are working with all of our partners here to administer those programs. So hopefully, well, I don't want to say hopefully, we're going to fight to keep this going and to make sure this funding is there. So without further ado, before I finish that off or finish this off. Any questions, concerns?
I had a quick question.
Yes.
So we all know that BHI has many tentacles. We have a 7-point plan, so there's lots of buckets. One of our groups is the Sustaining Existing Homeowner Group. Ms. Ruby, who is here today, is really active in that group. And I'm excited to see that we're talking about sustaining the existing legacy homeowners. You were talking about the foreclosure fairness bill there. And I'm wondering, since we're considering trying to impact the wealth gap and we want to make sure we're doing the intergenerational wealth, if there might be a way for some of the program to include the ability to help people in that foreclosure scenario, once they are no longer on the cliff, have the kind of estate planning they need to make sure that, they're able to put that property securely in the hands of the next generation. And it's a great touch point when you're already there with a family talking about foreclosure, to be able to make sure that you can also maybe scaffold in some of that estate planning assistance.
So I'll say two things. One, and also thank you for that comment, Bambi. And also, Miss Ruby, I just want to shout out your work. I know that you have been doing a lot of great work in the community, and I, outside of these spaces, I hear about it. So kudos to you, ma'am. And so with that, and don't worry, Anna, I see it. We have the lol. We have the hotline, and they have a number of resources on how to that might be useful to those that are looking to do estate planning. I know it's a conversation I've had personally in my family. So I would definitely suggest checking out the hotline. Also, I don't know if it was a slip of my tongue or yours. To be clear, this is a budget request for the program. So the program exists. We just have to make sure this continues to be funded. And this funding is aimed to continue services. So knock on wood, hopefully we can integrate something like that in the future, because I know from looking at what is happening in, for example, in Washington, D.C., when I was previously with Habitat and I attended Habitat in the Hill, there was a local effort in Washington, D.C. to make sure that particularly Black families had access to estate planning resources, as well as when a family member died, that instead of instead of that deed falling into a rabbit hole, making sure that families had access to services to keep that home in the family. So yeah, I would definitely just offer those things. And did you have something you want to chime in here?
Yeah, thank you, Cliff. I just wanted to, can you go back one slide, Cliff?
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you, Bambi, for touching on the sustaining existing homeowners issue. In 20% request, I am purposefully trying to keep our bucketing of that money fairly broad. The only funding that Cliff and I are keeping really specific is the permanent affordability seed funding. So yeah, stay here, which is a minimum of 10 million that I'd like to have in there, and the dedicated funding to continue the work of the Home Futures Institute. Everything else is a percentage, and that would be decided with community's input. And especially under the homeownership preservation, because there has been a lot of conversation about the need for that, but the need for that is really expansive. And there are a couple of challenges with that, in that there is a lot of equity that is built up in people's homes that they are not going to want to give up for permanent affordability. And there are a lot of people out there with that equity in their homes that they want to pass on as intergenerational wealth, but they're also looking at how to plan effectively for their older years and how to manage, their medical and their housing needs that are going to increase as time goes forward, and how to navigate all of that. that. I think all have been having those conversations in our personal lives and have been hopefully sharing the information that we learn with our friends and our relatives. But it needs to be on a more broad spectrum. And I have ideas on how to have those conversations with estate planning attorneys and with technical experts to bring those into community and to have the funding to help people move forward with that sort of thing, but also to have funding available for much needed repairs and funding to help bring more homes into permanent affordability, or at least semi-permanent affordability. But again, those are all conversations that will have to happen in community before we commit to any funding. And before we run out of time,
Wait, and just 2 seconds.
sure.
So something I slipped in earlier, but I did that very intentionally. It wasn't just to compliment this amazing assembly here, but on these two buckets, the competitive funding and homeownership preservation, once our proposal makes its way through, the agency and, these ideas really get cracking, if this goes through and this proposal holds, I will be actually reaching out to many of you to, like Anne was mentioning just now, to convene a stakeholder group. So I'm glad that you brought that up again, Anne. And so I put our info in the chat. I'll do it again before we end. But definitely please reach out to us so I can make sure that, you're included in this. Sorry, I just want to make sure it's very clear. We are actually going to be doing that stakeholdering very soon.
Yeah, we're taking to heart the nothing about us without us. I feel very strongly about that. I know Cliff feels very strongly about that. We are a community and we need to act that way. So that being said, what I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to hear about is that on the 15th of this month, which I think is Monday, and I'm not swearing to it because this is a goal by our policy shop, they are going to be releasing a request for proposals for an organization to conduct the study on alternative methods of calculating AMI, area median income. I bring this up and I will be sure to share that RFP announcement with Bambi so that it can go into the digest, because the use of AMI in all public funding impacts who's eligible, who's not eligible, and can also impact the state and local government and nonprofit companies or organizations' ability to access federal dollars. So I have been helping our policy shop with framing up the scope of work to ensure that it includes the end result, which is supposed to be a report to the legislature, includes a crosswalk of the consequences or cause and effect of choosing to use alternative methods to calculate AMI. Because we do not want to inadvertently lose our ability to access federal dollars, but we do want to be as inclusive as possible. So I wanted to make sure that folks knew that that request for proposal was coming out next week and that it could potentially have some pretty significant impacts if the legislature chooses to pursue any recommendations that come from that report.
Indeed. Also, I am so sorry I mixed up the AMI conversation with the appraisals conversation. This is what happens when your brain's in policy, but there is some good news about all of that coming hopefully in the next couple of months, knock on wood. So Monday, August 12th is our next Affordable Homeownership Assembly Group meeting. I hope many of you are there. And as promised, please stay in touch. Also, that number is incorrect, but I'll put my number in the chat and also my my commerce cell's a little bit on the fritz right now, so it should be sorted out by Monday afternoon, but that is a number you can reach me at.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cliff and Anne. And again, just going to reiterate, we're here at the top of the hour. We ran out of opportunity here to have some announcements from the group. So if there is something that people need to know, please send it to me, and I would be happy to forward it via email to everyone. Anything that's upcoming that you would have missed if we are not able to send that out for you. So please do send it my way. And then I'll just remind everyone again, we're talking about a proposal to the governor, and there are multiple steps here. We're really excited to see the support in this vision. But if we don't lean in to say, this is also what we want, this is also what is necessary, then it just becomes a recommendation. It is definitely important when Commerce speaks about what they think they need, but when they have allies who step forward with them to say, we want this too, it is a much more effective message. So we will be making sure we can link you all in on the opportunity for that. So yeah, super excited. There's many steps, but we can be involved in so many of them. And I'm so excited that you all took the time today. Have an absolutely amazing weekend. It is absolutely gorgeous. And take care, everyone. I will be sure to send the recording out, and you will have that link in our next digest. Thank you so much for being here today.